Welcome everybody to tonight's delayed fantastic event, which is called Temporary Hoardings, which is a fanzine panel discussion featuring fanzine makers past, present, future, and current, and so on. Unfortunately, we couldn't get live on Facebook, but there we go. So I'm going to introduce everybody. No, everyone's going to introduce themselves just for 1 minute or less, and then we're going to make a start onto it. So before we start though, even though we're not live, this is a free event, totally free to watch, but if you want to donate, there's a donate link at the top of the video, which is either to Black Lives Matter or to Love Music, Hate Racism, which are both causes which are close to everybody's heart here, and they would benefit from your money due to the lack of gigs and the lack of opportunity to raise money. So everyone's going to talk, explain themselves. Dee, can you explain yourself first?
Oh, right, me first. Okay, well, I'm Dee, and I started a fanzine called All About Dee and Friends in 1994, inspired by a gig and hearing about my friend Sid, who's also on this call. Heard about him on the evening session. I knew nothing about fanzines, and I just thought, oh, that's a good idea. It was a really boring gig, and I thought, yeah, I'll start my own fanzine. And that was it. And then I produced all of this lovely lot over the years and interviewed loads of people, and I've had, it changed my life, basically. That's it.
Excellent. I'm just going through the list as it appears on my screen. Jade and Tom, it's got you together. You can speak separately there.
Yeah, I'm Tom. I play guitar and I do vocals in Kulk, and we make various scenes. I've got some here, there's some there, one there, one there, another one somewhere. I've lost it. Here it is. Another one there. We do sort of, zines related to our band and sort of everything to do with that, I guess. And this is Jade. Yeah, I'm Jade. I play synth and drums in Kulk, and yeah, our zines we just give out at gigs, and they're all arty and music related. Jade does her own zines as well. Don't know if I can open them up. Some of them are. No. Some of them are explicit.
Nice. Okay, I see.
Hi, my name's Sid, and during the 90s, for some reason, which I still can't remember why, I used to run a fanzine called Abuse Fanzine, which used to get me in trouble with the post office and things like that. Apparently I started in 91, thanks to you, because I honestly couldn't remember. I did 15 issues. The first couple worked great, and then we got slightly better. Blimey, there you go.
Okay,
yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was more than anything, it was fun. Met lots of cool people. I mean, really cool people. Met some really good bands. Went to too many gigs. Didn't sleep a lot. Yeah, the 90s were pretty cool for music, to be honest. So it was good. It was fun. And I'm the same person I am now, and it sort of molded me to be a nice person, I think. Fanzines. There you go.
Excellent. Tony D.
Hello, yeah, I'm Tony D from Ripped and Torn fanzine, which I did in November 76 to March 79. And then I did another fanzine called Kill Your Pet Puppy from December 79 to about 1984, 83, 84. I can't remember how that one finished. So I sort of transferred into sort of circus performance. Ran away and joined the circus at some point. It was a kind of crossover. But that was the Ripped and Torn, is collected in a book now by Ecstatic Peace Library. Kill Your Pet Puppies not, still trying to get that together. I started Ripped and Torn in November 76 because I wanted to be part of this great punk rock movement that I'd heard about. I was living in Glasgow, so quite cut off from it all, and that gave quite a good perspective on it all. And then I moved down to London in 77, joined in with it. Like I said, I didn't sleep for 2 years, and enjoyed every minute of it.
Excellent. We'll talk to you a bit more in a minute. Arlo is next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Arlo, I'm 10, and I basically made this fanzine called Pint Size Punk. It kind of started because I have some adult friends called Mikey and Nicola, and they have like really awesome launch parties, and I just wanted to like do that. So yeah, basically I've just done that, and it's become really big, and I'm sitting here now waffling on to you about it.
Certainly are, like the rest of us. Good job. Roger is next.
Yeah, Roger. 76, I got involved in an organisation called Rock Against Racism that we formed, and it seemed logical that we should have some kind of fanzine might be the wrong word, but have some kind of publication that pushed why we were existing, why we hated fascism, why we loved music. And that's what we started, that's what we did. For the next, 7 or 8 years, a bit less than that maybe. I was only involved really from 76 to 79, but that was good. But I was already a soul boy, and I'm a jazz man. All this jumping up and down to rock and roll is too much for my brain, even when I was 20. But I'm a good dancer.
Maybe you can demonstrate that later. Ruth.
Not with these old knees, mate.
Ruth, next, please.
Yeah, I got involved in temporary hoardings, like Roger was just talking about, Rock Against Racism. I was on the Right to Work march because I was unemployed in 1976. I think I went on the march. And after that, I got involved. I met all the people like Roger and David Widgery and Red and Saunders, and got involved in temporary hoardings. I've only got like, there's a cover. It wasn't in black and white. It was in colour, but I stupidly didn't have anything. I'm involved in putting on an exhibition at the moment at the Delaware Pavilion, which will open mid-December and run for 5 months, which is about Rock Against Racism. It's sort of based around temporary hoardings. This is one of my pieces for temporary hoardings. 2 punk girls. I was probably the most punk of the, there's me. Probably the most punk of the graphic designers, I think, involved. I kind of just embraced punk. I met punks on the Right to Work march, and like I never looked back really. But I was really, my music all tastes were with reggae, so the combination of reggae and punk for me was just a no-brainer. Like we put on gigs that just put both sets of music on the stage together, and it really worked, and mixed up the fans as well. So yeah, excellent.
Well, we're going to start by continue to talk to Ruth and Roger and also Tony about what it was like in the 70s putting out fanzines. So I've got some questions, right? Any of you three to answer. I wondered if you thought that the rise of fanzines in that particular period was connected with the music that was popular at the time. Was it symptomatic of the period, as in there was a ethos that anybody could play in a band, just pick up guitar, play 3 chords, anybody could be a writer, I suppose. Do you think the form of music and the form of fanzines went together?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the rise, the fanzines happened because we had a revolution in the technological revolution in the print industry, actually, because we went from heavy metal type to you could do anything, like ripped and torn and thrown up in the air and whatever. And it opened the way for a whole lot of people to get involved in making their own fanzines and writing and learning how to write in a way that was accessible as well. And I think that whole period was a real blossoming in how people connected together, both graphically and musically, and because everything fed into each other, didn't it? It was a sort of era where, the bands and the lyrics it was a kind of two-tone nation that was a subculture in our country, and it was like very explosive actually, and combative to the established, the normality that we all lived under. Had to be something.
I'll ask Tony to maybe expand on that a little bit, but also something that Ruth just touched on was how you did it technically in the time before computers. I wonder how you managed to mass produce fanzines. I know Ruth began to touch on that. Is Tony there?
I'm still here, yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, I was working in an office, and I managed to produce the first Ripped and Torn one. I was 10 copies and 10 pages of 10 copies. I managed to sneak about 100 photocopies in during the week. It took me about a week to sneak it in. So that's how the first one was done. The picture was cut out and glued onto a bit of paper, and felt penned around with writing or using a typewriter. So it's all very, very basic. Cut and paste was cut and paste in those days, scissors and glue. But so the first one was done like that, and I thought that was it. I've done what I wanted to do. I did these 10, but I sent one down to Rough Trade, and they sent back an order for 200. So I can't get that. I'm not going to do 2,000 copies on the work photocopier. And so, like Ruth said, printing a change. I went to a printer. I found a printer on the street, through the Yellow Pages, and they said they would do it. They'd do a minimum run of 500, which is a bit of a shocker. But I managed to do it. I sold that 500. So I got another compendium bookshop ordered 200, and then I sold 100 in Glasgow, which is quite a surprise because I never saw anybody else who liked punk. I took them around the local record shops. This is another thing about what you said, Richard, is it wasn't just the bands, it was people. There were people wanting to read about stuff.
Yeah.
And there was more writing than there was records at the time, really. So they were buying these fanzines. Whoever they were buying them.
Excellent. So
later on as well, the link with the bands as well is you could take the fanzines to gigs and sell them at the gig. Yeah. So you're very immediate. You're with the people, and so that was quite a revolutionary way of distributing stuff, really.
So I'll maybe ask Roger if he'd continue on that theme, because that period was totally in flux. There was things happening all the time. There was music changing constantly, politics changing constantly. Seeing the technology was quite laborious. How did you manage to react, Roger, to events so quickly that you could put out fanzines and leaflets and so on that reacted to what was going on and told people about the carnivals and the demos and so on that were happening?
I think you have to include the football fanzines as well. They're going to that whole the football fans were trying to get some kind of way into getting back to their game because they were completely alienated from it with the monies. And so there's football fanzines, and I think they had a big influence. The key thing is that the artwork was the right way round. I mean, I was trained as a compositor, so I can set type upside down and back to front and read it okay. But the thing about the new technology, one is if you had a photocopier, you could blow it up. So therefore you could take a word and blow it up 6 or 7 times on a photocopier till it became a headline. If you cut a picture out or tear a picture out and put it down on a piece of paper. So because the artwork was right reading, it just made it possible for everybody to get access to it. We're slightly different, I think, with Temporary Hoarding because we deliberately set up as a political fanzine. We set it up as an anti-Nazi fanzine. So right from the word go, our influence wasn't so much the fanzines, but what they did under agitprop in the Russian Revolution. So we was more concerned about having a temporary hoarding, a wall newspaper, something that didn't have a long life. We was also lucky because we was working in a litho print shop at Socialist Worker. So we could get the machine minders to run off of an experiment. So we could experiment with size, colour and all that. So we could really play around in that sort of genre. But
in the machine grinders, I remember just went off and had a cup of tea and let it run. So we kind of got like a few thousand more copies than what we
dropped off the end. So I think that was the key thing. But we wanted to use it as a political weapon. So therefore we had stuff about Northern Ireland, about sexual repression under fascism, where racism came from. Dave Widgery would write some fantastic stuff in it. So we was a deliberately political fanzine. Then the music coupled with it. So right for the word go, we had to include black music. We had to include reggae. The whole idea was to have a black and white band on the stage and then jam at the end. So there was unity on the stage. unity on the streets, unity on the stage, and that was the kind of the ethos and the pressure to put it out, because not only was it a really blowing up time, but God, the racism was really, really bad, you know. So it was a very, very heavy time for Asian and black communities.
Not that different from as it is now. So Ruth, I'd like you maybe to comment on this. I was going to ask you what the reaction of fans, bands and labels were to the fanzine, but I was going to ask you specifically about one thing, because I believe, I could be wrong, that at the time Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, who were quite an exciting, rebellious band at the time, talked to Temporary Hoarding, but he wouldn't talk to the mainstream. And then today I see that he says he's going to vote for Trump in the election. So that's two questions. How did bands react to you? But also, what do you feel about Johnny Rotten, so-called Johnny Rotten?
Well, he was always a bit of a wild card, wasn't he? Too many drugs, maybe. I don't know. I just, we did interview him. David Widgery interviewed him, and the interview took place at a pub, and so there was this drunken Scottish football fan there as well, who is part of the interview. I mean, we did things like we interviewed the bands about sexism, about racism. We like Roger said, the reason that we were, I consider us to be a fanzine, even though it was a bit more upmarket production, was because we were immersed in the culture. We were immersed in the music. All the people that worked on it were actually really concerned about the sort of white-dominated music industry, and the way that doors were closed to black people and also to women, and the whole politics of it came from there. It came from what was happening around us, what was happening on the ground. And I don't think Temporary Hoardings could have existed without punk and without British reggae, really. That was that combination that created a really exciting time. And the writing was different than anything else you're going to read, you know. Like, I'm so glad to see that Pint Size, you know, like that this is still carrying on, you know, this tradition of people's voices is still getting out there, and you can just do it for yourself. And I'm really glad that's that, like Chris Packham, I'm forever punk in a way. You know what I mean? Once you sort of get into that ethos, it never leaves you. But when I say that, it has left Johnny Rotten, obviously. So, well.
Tony, what was the reaction of, because your fanzine was slightly different, what did you find the reaction of fans was, and bands, and also record labels? Was it easy to get access to the bands to talk to them, or were they protective of them, or how appreciative of your work were they?
I tended to stick to smaller bands. So when I moved to London in '77, the beginning of '77, it was almost the second wave of bands like the Lurkers, the Boys, 999, Adam and the Ants. These bands, I suppose the Banshees were still small, were unsigned. They were still playing gigs. Slits were still playing small gigs. So you just tend to go out to bands after a gig, speak to them, arrange an interview there and then, or a couple of days' time. And the big record companies recognised us, and I'd go around there and they'd give you free records. That was their service to the industry. So the punk rock industry was giving us free records, which we'd take straight down to Record and Tape Exchange and sell them on. You get a bit of silver-tongued devil in a CBS PR room saying how much you like David Essex and the ELO, and look at that, they had all these new records up. You had to be eagle-eye and you have to talk them off the shelves and into your bag.
Yeah, I think we stuck with the smaller bands. The big ones that we had for Carnival and stuff was always very, very difficult. It was a nightmare with the Clash, mainly not because of them, but because of their management. Steel Pulse was absolutely all the black bands, by and large, there was no problem. They would talk to us, we could get to them, except they thought that we would get them to cross over so they would make some money. And it was a great tragedy that we couldn't do that. I mean, it would have been great if we could do that, but we couldn't. Some people we did, Black Slate, Misty and Roots. Misty and Roots were the major RAR band. And out in West London, all the people knew each other out there. And the management of this,
Misty and Roots and the Ruts
we're all part of the same stable. So
yeah.
So it was okay. And then there was all the RAR groups up and down the country that were the bands. They just talked to themselves. I mean, that was no problem, you know.
I've got two more questions for this section, because I could listen to you all night, because it is so interesting. We need to do maybe one whole session dedicated just to each of these decades we're talking about. So I'm going to ask everybody in the 1970s to answer this one. Do you think fanzines changed things? Politics, music, society, culture, and so on. Do they help change things, or were they just reflecting a society that was changing anyway? Roger, why don't you answer that first, as you're on my screen?
I think they did. I mean, I remember the fanzines and also the kind of fanzine 7-inch singles. There was loads of them as well with ripped and torn covers on. Ripped and torn, I remember seeing it. I remember you see them around. I think they were very, very important because, as Ruth said, it was a period when people were really wanting to say something. The politics of the period was deeply reactionary. Racism was horrendous, and most important, unemployment was huge. And there was no vehicle, no space for the youth to actually talk to each other, except through the fanzines. And I think they were very important, and I think they had a great effect.
Excellent. Tony, do you want to answer the same question, please?
Yeah, I think they changed the record industry, the music biz, if you like, to make it more aware of people. I think they made it more open to people. They also took more chances, which they wouldn't have done. I think they had these outlets, the fancies that if record companies, smaller record companies could send copies out to fanzines, they'd review them. There'd be a voice. People would know about the recordings through these fanzines that create almost a subworld, the subculture became more important than the official culture.
Yeah.
I think it's the interesting thing when Nevermind the Bollocks came out and God Save the Queen and things like that. When God Save the Queen was kept off the top #1 with the Rod Stewart, everyone knows that was a fake. That was a real battle. I think that was the battle of the subculture being the Pistols and the culture being Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
And that's how important we've become. I think that wouldn't have happened without the fanzines, without the fanzines being a voice for the unrepresented, if you like.
Yeah.
One question for Ruth, please.
Yeah, I do think they changed something, and you know, like you could really take the piss out of artists, and it would be heard. You know, like Roger did this thing on Rod Stewart, for example, when he came out with all this racist crap. You know, that was in Temporary Hoardings, and it really made an impression. But I do think we shouldn't look at it like an era on itself, because these times remind me of those times. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think people are starting to find their voices and speak out and do things for themselves. And, you know, the whole process of being involved in a fanzine, or where you have that level of control, which I'd never had as a graphic designer before I got involved. You know, this was a big thing. It gives you confidence, and it gives you like the very, very, very important, it's a building process of yourself, and the creativity involved as well in it is really, really kind of makes you grow as a person, and working with other people, you know, the collaborative attitudes that were around then. And that all I can see now, actually, in Extinction Rebellion, in Black Lives Matter. You know, there is this kind of, I don't know, the horizontal organisation, which is going to change things, isn't it? Because we can't go on with kind of autocrat, mad people in control all over the world.
I think you're right. I think it's very noticeable how being creative and doing something you're proud of can totally change people. I'm thinking about Buryton Edmonds, where Kulk are from, which is a small town. The fascists have tried to grow there in the 70s. The National Front had their headquarters there, and because there's a thriving music scene where half the kids in the town are in bands, they've not been able to grow. They've tried to grow in the 2020s, the far right, and they've never had success. And I think that's largely thanks to young people involved in things that they're creative and working together and proud of. So therefore, they're not trying to look at other people to kick. They're bigging themselves up. I'm sure Kulk will talk about that a bit later on, perhaps. Right, final question for everybody for this little section is favourite memories. Do you mind going first, Ruth, as you're on my screen? Favourite memories of your time with the fanzine?
Well, one of my favourite memories was the can't find it now, the two punk girls that I did, which was actually I took the photograph out of ID magazine. Does anybody remember that?
I remember that.
It was great. It was a magazine that went round and just took photos of people in the street, and then it had their story and attached to it and where they got their clothes from and everything like that. And I saw these two girls who were chained together, bondage. And I thought, well, how interesting is that? Because, you know, Polystyrene's record, you know, bind me, tie me, chain me to the wall, I want to be a slave to you all. And then the opposite of that with, oh, bondage up yours. And I thought this really represented something, the fact that they were two girls chained together. I thought it really represented something like slavery, you know, was an expression of slavery. And so we were doing Temporary Hoardings, and it was published as a page 3, as a kind of pastiche on the page 3 Sun girls who were like, page 3 of the Sun had all these naked women on the page 3. And there was a lot of opposition to that at the time because it was just disgusting, basically, but objectification. But yeah, so that was one of my great moments. But there were many great. The main great moment for me was that I could just do what I wanted. You know, if I wanted to do something, I just did it, and everybody felt like that who worked on Temporary Hoardings. If you wanted to produce something, you know, you could do it, and there was no delineation between writers and art and graphic designers. You know, we all were seen as being equal, with an equal mind and an equal political kind of analysis, you know, and that was really important.
Excellent, thank you. Tony, favourite memories?
There's a little bit like Ruth, really. I think there's a whole bunch of them. It's not really one that really stands out, but I'll give you one. I think seeing bands was really exciting. Just seeing the amount of new bands there were, the amount of listening to new records all the time. I remember seeing the Ants for the first time, Adam and the Ants supporting X-Ray Specs at the Man in the Moon pub on the King's Road, which was just mind-blowing. I just thought, this is great. This is, you know, I was alive, you know. And then interviewing Adam after that, arranging after the gig to interview Adam. It was his first ever interview. And he came up to the interview and he had an acoustic guitar with him, and he played Young Parisians, which he'd just written the day before. So he played, he said, "What do you think of this?" And things like that are just incredible. I think that's just a few months after moving to London. You know, I think 6 months ago I was working in an office, looking at a dead-end future, and suddenly this is happening. So that memory, of course, gets better. But as Adam got bigger, that memory became more precious. I think I was there.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that still sticks in my mind, is I was maybe pleased to have done the whole thing. Everything was worth it because of that.
Roger, favourite memory?
Yeah, I've got 2, and they're both on the same day. I was stage managing the carnival in '78, And I introduced, at 12 o'clock, I introduced X-ray specs, and there was 4 people in the park. And it was just terrifying. I mean, we didn't know what was happening, didn't know where the demonstration was, where anybody was. And then just as she started doing her bondage, 80,000 people came into the park. That was the biggest high I've ever had, I think. And I think on the same day was Steel Pulse coming out on stage, all dressed as the Ku Klux Klan, to do Ku Klux Klan, which is just magic. So they were my big memories on the same day. Apart from the NF running away from us at Wood Green, but that's another story.
Brilliant, thanks you three. Don't go away. If you've got time to stay, because I've got some more joint question right at the end. I feel we should maybe do a whole hour just on what you three have done, or others in the same period.
I want to hear what the others say.
Listen to other people as well.
Born in the 1970s.
Yeah. So we're going to shoot forwards 20 years or so to the 1990s. We've got Sid and Dee. I'm probably not going to ask you individual questions because you two know each other quite well. You can just interrupt each other, I'm guessing, just the two of you. That's all right. Well, I was going to introduce it by saying during the period you were active in fanzines, DIY culture helped break several new bands into the mainstream. I'm thinking particularly of Ash, but there was also Biss and Smash who got on top of the pops, Period Pains getting in smash hits and so on. Why do you think that during the 90s it was possible for fanzine bands to suddenly break into the mainstream? Dee.
Well, before we get onto that, I just wanted to say I was there in 1978 at Victoria Park, and it was just amazing. And I'd just finished being a student, and punk was starting and stuff. And I didn't really know anything about fanzines then. And then my life changed, but I definitely was there, and it was just an amazing night. And I was thinking that because in '94 there was one in Brixton. And so we were there, and Smash were on do you remember Smash were on a lorry, and they were like playing as they were going down this lorry. And Tom Robinson, I remember going to see Tom Robinson and that was in the park at Brockwell Park in Brixton. And there's a connection because I think Tom Robinson was in the other one as well. And now
Levellers as well. It's the Levellers.
Oh yeah, the Levellers. Yeah. And I feel so guilty listening to you three because you know it's our fanzines were so indulgent compared to yours. There was no politics apart from the few bands like the Manics and like Smash who had political messages to get across. Most of the bands that we got involved in were just like musicians, and they were just like wanting to make a career. But the time was so different. And it's so interesting what you're saying. I feel it's like a sandwich. I feel like we're the middle of the sandwich, me and Sid and Richard, because you're the only one that's carrying on. Because the times now, as you said, Ruth, so carefully, that the times then in the late 70s and the times now, and the issues then, the racism, the sexism, the corruption of politicians and all that kind of stuff is so. Why has it come round again? But was it our fault? Was it our fault for the indulgent 90s? I just don't know. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Sid, about Richard's question? How did we break that? I mean, I think we had, I remember things like going up to Tea in the Park, and I'd met Biss by then, and I had like a whole bag of their singles with me, and I got on the plane to come home, and then we just knew a lot of people. We knew a lot of record company people, Enemy, Melody Maker, writers, and I remember walking down the middle of the plane just like dishing out these records to Mark Beaumont and people like that. So we had a kind of, how did we do it? I
think that's a really good point. We basically drank in the same pubs as the Enemy and Melody Maker, and we were like ahead of the game, and then 6-9 months later they'd start writing it. I mean, me and Dee still know Steve Lamacq pretty well. I've known Steve for 30 plus years. Simon Williams, who's writing for the Enemy, Fierce Panda Records. I mean, they're good people. They're still there doing their thing. And they were also, they're ex-fanzine people, and like people like Mark Sutherland was a fanzine kid. And who else was fanzine? Lots of fanzine people who went and write for the music press. And they are good people. James
McMahon as well. James Jam. He was fanzine.
And the 90s... it was like the Bull and Gate and Dublin cast in Camden, and I mean the example of Biss, again, they were fanzine kids. They sent the demo to every fanzine they'd been in contact. Totally blew everyone's minds. We were on it months before the enemy. Within 6-9 months, they were on top of the pops. It was, we were like a little bit of the tastemakers of.
We were. Yeah.
There was so much good stuff going in the 90s. I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, we were there, so we were slightly biased, but you had everything from starting from the 90s with Nirvana and all that Sub Pop and Babes in Toyland and all those lovely noisy bands, Riot Girl, Queercore, loads of hip hop, punk, hardcore, and then Britpop or whatever you want to call it. And then by the end of the decade, Coldplay, you know.
And
but there was a lot going on, a lot going on. And it was all the back rooms of pubs like Bull and Gate, Dublin Castle, the
Monarch,
the Falcon.
Yeah.
But there was lots of pubs like that up and down the country, like Cambridge. There's the Boat Race, Portland Arms, Joiners, Southampton. You know, there was like a network, I think, from memory, wasn't there? There was like a
and there was a massive network of fanzines. I mean, I've found in my garage 6 Xerox boxes of fanzines, and these are just a few. And I was thinking, because like your Kulk had done lovely arty ones. Some people did really nice arty ones too. It wasn't on or did individually coloured, front pages and things, hand coloured and that sort of thing. That's Angela from Norwich, who's now a Glasgow girl.
But the 90s was about music. I mean, I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Politics, we were still under Tory rule until 97, and the Godfather, Mr. Blair, came along, and we all fell for him, and blah blah blah. And there was Britpop, and everything was great. There was loads of money in the 90s.
There was so much money, so much money. I mean,
one of my friends got signed for hundreds of thousands of pounds. It was mad. It was record labels just had more money than sense. It was all pre-internet. So when we had that BIS demo, I remember getting phone calls from record companies going, "Can I listen to the BIS demo?" It's like, well, you take me out for a beer, you might give it to you or something, And it was like that, wasn't it? It was like that because they couldn't get hold of it. I mean, BIS was allegedly still the only unsigned bands they ever got on top of the pops, which is not technically true because Chemical Underground were going to put the record out anyway. But I mean, that was a huge thing from your friends that sent you a demo. Was it 6-9 months they were on that biggest TV program in the country? It was bonkers.
Yeah. I was there by the side of the
stage.
Did
that, And I mean, Smash for me, Smash is like, I think it really interesting. Smash were very much powered by fanzines before anyone gave us stuff. But they were just, I think all the British bands, the 90s, and maybe the Manics, they were like the band for me because they were just phenomenal. I mean, BIS were an amazing live band, and they did some really good stuff, and Candy Pop is still one of the greatest pop songs of all time in my ears. But I don't know, right time, right place. It was all pre-internet. We did drink in the same pubs as the enemy. You could go out on a Tuesday night and you would bump into Steve Lamacq and Simon Williams and I don't know who else was around. John Peel occasionally, maybe. And, then you give them a CD or a demo and a fanzine, and they sort of took it seriously. You got to remember, the evening session didn't get on Radio 1 until 92, 93.
Something like that, yeah.
Radio 1 is nothing like it was now there. During the day, it was like Radio 2. It was all top 40 music. Apart from Peel, I can't remember anyone else to hear, I don't know, Mudhoney or Fugazi or something. You'd have to, and then the evening session came along. So they had to start playing DIY, indie, punk rock or whatever. And, Lamacq and Joe Wiley, they did a good job. Yeah. It was that simple, really.
Excellent. I'll interrupt you there. That's really good discussion. Both your fanzines had distinctive looks. I wondered if you could, number one, describe them to us, and also talk about how you used or abused or ignored computers to do them, because people just getting into the habit of getting computers in their house and using them. Do you want to tell us, Dee, how you used or didn't?
Oh, me? Okay. I was going to start with Sid. Well, I was a book editor for a few years, and then I moved into IT. And I was like a stickler for page breaks and not word counts so much, but my fanzine was very neat. I just this is quite an early one. And every paragraph ended, every page ended on a paragraph. Cut and stick photos. So what you were saying about cut and stick photos, there's a gun line down one. You literally did do that. So I did all the stuff in Word, printed it out, and then stuck on the extra little bits. So there's a few kind of like people's names of gigs and stuff, but I organised it into interviews, reviews, and so on and so forth, and that's just the way I did it. And I had a contact in a company called Xerox who used to do quite a lot of my photocopying for me, and when that wasn't anymore the case, I just paid for it at work, just used to do it at work. So yeah, Word on my home computer and photocopiers and a bit of cut and paste. Sid?
I first started writing for a fanzine called Food, Lust and Guitars, which was run by Mark Sutherland. Who, I don't know if this matters, but he became editor of Melody Maker and is now editor of Music Week. But anyway, his fanzine was very cut and paste. So I basically, when I did my own fanzine, I just did that, and it was a typewriter and lots of Pritt stick and old school 70s punk rock, I guess. I was aware of sniffing glue and fanzines like that. And I used to get it photocopied. I still use the photo. I'm a promoter now, so the guy that still does my flyers and posters is the same guy that used to do my fanzine 30 odd years ago. And he's seen, I have not seen that for years. Anyway,
really?
Yes, I used to get it photocopied. It used to cost me quite a lot of money, but we don't do this to make money, do we? So I'd lose money. Yeah, so it's old school photocopied in 91 because I didn't have a computer. So.
And there's another point here. A4, A5. Okay, so A4, one staple in the corner. A5, you have a nice long handle stapler, so you staple it down the middle so it holds together. One of my friends used to say, "I love your fanzines." She said, "I have a pile of them in the loo, and I just read them in the loo. They're so easy to read in the loo." So yeah, that's how we did them.
Thinking about money, Steve Lamont once said he used to go to gigs without enough money to get home, to force him to sell his fanzine so he could get the bus fare back home. Did you ever try that? Because I know I tried it with not enough petrol in the car, so I had to go out and sell repeats so I had enough money to get the petrol to get the car home. Anyone tried that?
No.
No, I was far too sensible. I mean, if I was thirsty, I could shift 50 fanzines within like half hour and buy beer. I mean, I used to actually really like selling fanzines. I'm quite a shy guy, really, but I actually really like going up to people and going, and I think a lot of people just gave me 50p to go away a lot of the time. But yeah, I could sell fanzines quite well. So
I was incredibly good at giving it away. If I made a few quid on any fanzine I did, that was more than. In fact, I made most of the money I made from the because we haven't talked about the post. Okay, so you guys in the 21st century, you barely know what a postman is these days, but everything we did by post. We had to send them out. So people used to send me little wrapped up £1.40. It was £1 for the fanzine and 40p for the postage. So they send me £1.40, and the most money I made was from the ones I sold by post, because when I was out at gigs, I occasionally I'd sell them, but usually because my list grew so big, because we had all those record companies and PR companies and the bands themselves and friends you had and other people who made fanzines and the people you swapped with, because so many people you actually just swapped with, so you didn't bother paying them and they didn't bother paying you, and it was massive. I can't tell you how many people there were doing fanzines, and just I looked through all two of the boxes, and a lot of them I do remember, and I remember who made them, but some of them I'm thinking, I have no idea who made this, but obviously somebody sent it to me, and I probably reviewed it in my fanzine, because that was another thing. We were all very kind of like matey to each other and reviewed each other's fanzines.
Yeah,
Go on, Sid. Sorry.
The whole mail order thing was, again, the 70s and 80s was big, but it was also big in the 90s. I mean, I sold my fanzine in the most weirdest countries, Dubai, Singapore, Greece. I was quite big in Greece for some weird reason. So I mean, at my peak, I was getting 200 packages a week. It used to drive my mother right up the wall. So
I was going to say something about that I used to get requests to buy records from Sweden. A lot of people
Yeah,
in Sweden
exactly. Yeah.
send you some weird money, whatever the money was. They get this weird. I don't know.
Yeah,
they
I used to get, cash in US dollars during the 90s. Jeez, the banks hated them. But yeah, I mean, it was a worldwide thing as well, because Biss kicked off in Japan and smashed America. And I mean, bands like Period Pains and the Pinups, they had some weird cult following, and Ash were quite well known all over the world, weren't they? And things.
Yeah, yeah. They're still doing
I used
well.
to get some. The only thing though, when you're quite popular in Greece, the amount of really, really, really bad Greek demos I got is just phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure they're lovely people, but I've never heard a decent Greek band in my life.
My first, I was going to say, my first issue, I had some Greek, because my sister is married to a Greek man, and a member of her family was a young teenager at the time, and she wrote me some reviews of some Greek bands. And there was one called Tripes, which means holes. I can't remember much about them, but I just remember her writing about it.
The fair dues, though, I mean, if any band's watching this, you want to go to Athens, because no one tours Athens, no one goes to Greece. I mean, bands like the Heartthrobs played in front of 4,000 people in '93 or something. You know.
Placebo is still massive in Greece.
Well, there you go. So.
2 more questions for you two. How has writing a fanzine changed your life? And thinking of what Sid's saying about those bands' names, I know he's put out records and CDs, and I know he's a promoter still.
Well, yeah, I mean, for my stupid sins, I thought in '97 I'd start a record label, and that's why I'm still skin. And yeah, I've been putting on gigs on and off for 25 years. On a good year, I do about 40 gigs a year in Reading. I guess from unknown local stuff to who have I done recently? Shonen Knife from Japan, Steve Ignorant, Slice of Life, TV Smith. Just go back to Tony, I do bands like 999 and The Lurkers. I don't even know what version of The Lurker it is, but it's got Arto in it. And I've done Chelsea and all that sort of 70s punk. Who else? Sounds from the 80s. And then, you know, all the local Reading stuff, the Amazons, Sundara Karma, Matt Maltese. Biss, I did Biss a few years ago. I did Smash Apps. Did I Smash? Yeah, I did Smash and War Rats once. And I put on Eds from Smash last year. So yeah, I put on gigs. And I'm, like Ruth said, I'm in this for life now, because once you're in it, you know, it's I don't know, like it's a lifestyle, but I met some so cool people. I mean, Tony and Ruth and Roger have seen X-Ray Specs. I would have gone back in a time machine to the X-Ray Specs in '76 or something. So, I mean, you've totally had punk rock me. Bro. I know people have seen Crass, and I've never seen Crass. The newest I got is Steve Ignorant, Slice of Life. Lovely guy, absolutely phenomenal guy. I totally recommend him. So yeah, I put on gigs. I'm still influenced by all this talking to people. I mean, I'm going to meet my old mate in the pub, Malcolm, who's an old smelly punk rocker, and you know, that's what you need in life, I think. So it keeps me young, it keeps me busy, and it keeps me sane. And I've not put a gig on for 6 months, and I don't think I'll be putting on a gig on for about 12 months. So I don't want to do online stuff really, and I definitely don't want to do gigs in cars. What's all that about?
Gigs in cars. Dee, how has it changed your life?
Yeah, well, I think that it took me till almost 50 to actually find that the thing I absolutely loved doing for a job was working with teenagers in secondary schools. And I'd worked in corporate environments before then, and for various reasons I kind of fell into schools. First job, for those of you youngsters, the first job I ever did was a cover supervisor, which is the most rubbish job in the world. Don't ever be tempted to be a cover supervisor. I hated that. But when I got actually into the classroom, and I found that I absolutely loved working with teenagers. And I think the relevance of that to the fanzine world was because I was old, you know, I was quite old to be doing a fanzine when I started doing a fanzine. But I spent so much time hanging out with teenagers and just 20 somethings. And that really, it filled my soul, and it filled my heart and my understanding of youngsters' lives. And I think that I think it's great for teachers to go into teaching much later in life, because you bring a whole world of experience with you. And I absolutely loved. So if you're one of those kids that's like a bit out there or you know, a bit different, I found those kids, we gravitated to each other. And how I always felt, and I always used to say, I'm very like ordinary on the outside, but I've always had a punk soul, and that came from 77 as well. So that came from being, involved in music then. But then this whole thing, this thing that exploded in my life in the 90s, completely changed my life. I don't know. I reread my 1995 diary recently. I had to read it for something. I can't remember what it was now. And I don't know how I held down a full-time job in IT, because I don't know how I ever did any bloody work, because I was always out. Nearly every night I was out. And when I wasn't out, I was like talking to people on the phone all day long instead of doing any work. How did I do any work? Held on to a job, earned the most money I ever earned in a whole year in my life in 1995. But I just had the most amazing time. I had amazing experiences. I went to different countries in the world. I went on tour with bands, and BIS changed my life. Part of the reason I now live in Scotland is they're down the road from me. They're my best buddies still. So I met them when Sid and I put on their first gig, and they said, "Where are we going to stay?" I said, "Come and stay at my house." And they were 16, 17 and 18 when I met them. And now they're my best buds down the road. They're brilliant, and I love them. And
I mean, all these years I've been involved in this nonsense, I could count on one hand the amount of dicks. I'm allowed to say dicks on this. Most people involved in this world are very sound people. They're in it for the right reasons. We're all mad music obsessives. I've been gigging for 30 years. I used to own far too many records, and I'm totally in awe of people like Steve Ignorant and TV Smith, and people have been doing. Charlie Harper's 76, 77, and he's out there doing it. Well, he's not doing it tonight, but he would be out there doing it. And I want to get to 76 and put on smelly punk rock shows and go, hey. I've met people in their 30s who've never been to a gig. How can I trust these people? How can I trust these people? Do you know what I mean? If you've not been to a gig in your 30s, you've got to have a long look at yourself and go.
Favourite memory, either of you two?
Summer of 95.
Say it again.
Summer of 1995.
Yeah.
It was really hot. I think I was in Canton for about 6 months. And you could just tell something was happening. As well. It was all that. I don't know. I got no problem with Britpop, but the pubs were amazing. Everyone was out. It was really hot. It was. I think that summer was amazing. BIS on Top of the Pops was just surreal. Smash on Top of the Pops was pretty bonkers, but they were signed by then. For me, Reading bands like the Period Pains, Pin-Ups, Gel, Disco Pistol. We had our own little weird DIY scene that was about 20 people. Reading festivals during the 90s were cool.
Yeah.
Lots of 7-inch record labels, good people. It was just, hindsight, the 90s was a great decade for us, because we were young, weren't we, Dee? So.
We were young, yeah, and we were, we were considered. I hated that phrase, but people did look to us as tastemakers. Do you remember the tip sheet? Do you remember we did the tip sheet?
Well, we can't talk about that because that was Jonathan King.
I know it was, but the concept was quite fascinating, because it was basically a music industry insiders weekly kind of just fly sheet thing of different up and coming bands and things, but they got both Sid and I to contribute to it. So we could tip any bands we like, and we used to have to write a little weekly slot about what we'd done, what gigs we'd been to, and this went out across the whole music industry. So we did have a voice. We managed to get a voice to do that through that. And that sort of thing. So that was good. I just say one more thing before we leave, is that the politics thing, life comes full circle, doesn't it? I was so involved in politics in the 70s, and I'm so massively involved in politics now, and I still bring my sort of all that inside stuff, and that interviewing people. We interviewed bands. Some of the bands we interviewed, I interviewed The Verve once. And, bands like that you just think, well, how did that happen? It gives you a kind of inner sort of confidence and ability to communicate, I suppose, in a way that...
It was quite cool watching bands in the back room of One Man and a Dog, and some of them are quite big, in the early days, I was quite matey with Radiohead because no one gave us stuff about them for about 2 or 3 years, and they were playing in
Yeah.
front of one man and a dog, and yeah, so
Yeah, but okay, we'll better stop. Let the
Yeah, better
youngsters
stop
have a
and blab
chance.
it
Yeah.
all.
Well done. Don't disappear though, because there's a little quiz at the end.
Oh God.
Thank you very much.
That's
That was
okay.
really interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt. We're going to finish with some people who are making fanzines at the moment, which is Jade and Tom, who do Kulk Zine in sunny Bury St Edmunds, Rock City, and Arlo, who does Pint Sized Punk. Are you both there and listening?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all good. I'm here.
Excellent. I assume Arlo's there. Are you there, Arlo? Oh, there you are. I heard you. Good job. So, first question for you three. You can just shout or whatever. As younger people, how did you discover fanzines? Let's start. Sorry. Yeah, start with Arlo.
Like I said earlier, it was just my friends who made zines, and like they have really awesome launch parties, and like my mum asked me what I wanted to write about, because like imagine you're a 10-year-old doing really boring homeschooling on a terrible platform, and it's just a bit miserable, like, and I wanted to make something physical, and like my mum asked me what I wanted to write about, and I just said music, and it kind of escalated from there, and so like Pint Sized Punk was born. And like as you can see, the first issue's like paper, but then after that it's become like glossy and stuff, and you can see how it just progresses, and it's become like really big.
Excellent. Good answer. Jade and Tom, how did you discover fanzines?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of, I get sort of, you wouldn't expect that. I sort of got into fanzines sort of more from an American side, I think, until I sort of really dug deep into zines, like before I found out about stuff like sniffing glue and stuff. It was probably stuff like the Riot Girl zines and things like that I was first seeing. And it was an interest in American hardcore that first sort of got me to look at zines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely like the more feminist movements for me as well, like just because it was a really important thing to me, and just by the music I was listening to, it was finding zines that were done by bands.
So Jade, do you have any favourite classic fanzines?
Oh, you kind of already nicked mine.
Yeah, well, I suppose I love like I've always studied
the ones that
graphic.
Kathleen Hanna was making were like
those original the Bikini Kill zines and stuff like that. It was just they have a great aesthetic to them, and I think we've always been most interested by the sort of the zines made by bands, and that they were handed out by the bands and stuff like that. I just think it's really
and then also kind of like artists zines just starting to get into the art world, like they become a very easy distributable thing to get your artwork out there, and for us we kind of merge our music and art together, so it's nice to find a cheap, easy platform then.
Yeah.
So Arlo, are you aware of any favourite fanzines that you've got?
Yeah, I've got some over there. I'll just get that.
Excellent. At any minute now.
There's this guy called Russell.
Yeah.
And he sent me some zines that he and his daughter make called Lunchtime for the Wild Youth.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And he puts like gig reviews from like the 90s and stuff, as well as just like little comics and pictures. So take a look at that because it's really amazing.
Excellent. Thank you. So Arlo, as you're there on my screen at the moment, you obviously could have written on the internet. Why did you choose to do it on paper rather than do a website or something?
I just wanted something physical because on the internet you can't just like go around saying with like, oh, here's a link to this blog. Like you need, and it was like everyone was really depressed in the lockdown, and they were like really excited getting stuff in the post. Sort of like that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it just Wait, what's the question again? I've gone off.
Why paper fanzines not on the internet?
Sorry.
You're answering it well, so don't worry.
I just like I'm really not that techie. I'm really terrible at doing stuff like on the internet. I can if my mum gives me the phone to do some posts, because I work at a record shop. On one Sunday when we were working, that I just did like loads of records with my mum, loads of videos and posted it on my socials of my mum singing into this little.
I've seen some of these, yes.
And just posting random stuff. So I'm really terrible on the internet, and just something physical that you can hold and just flip through. I think it's pretty special.
I totally agree. When I've received yours in the post, it's made me really want to do another physical one. But then I thought, how am I ever going to sell it at the moment? How have you managed to sell yours so efficiently when there's no gigs, record shops are mostly shut or not receiving many people? How have you managed to sell them?
Word of mouth and stuff like that. Is that the phrase? I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just people telling other people, and then they'll just order it.
Yeah.
You can buy it in most record shops around Bath and Bristol, and online on Bandcamp. Yeah. Because there's loads of bands I interview do post just got interviewed by the Pint Size Punk today.
Yeah.
And then loads of people who follow it just because I've got Biffy Clyro in my next zine, which is out for pre-order.
Yeah.
Loads of people bought it just because there's Biffy in.
Yeah. And you've had quite a lot of publicity, haven't you? Lauren Laverne has helped you, and not to mention BBC and ITV and Australian broadcasting.
Basically, it's all thanks to Lauren Laverne. Because if she hadn't tweeted, I wouldn't have been on BBC Breakfast and gone on other TV shows and radio shows. So I have a lot to thank to Lauren Laverne, and I've interviewed her and stuff.
Oh, yes.
So, and my dad got really jealous because we were exchanging emails, and he got really jealous that she signed the emails with an L kiss.
That's interesting, Lauren Laverne, because she was in a band when Sid and Dee and I were starting our fanzines. There she is. Talk, Dee, then we'll get you on the screen. Oh, yeah, I've muted you, sorry.
I mean, yeah, Kaneki were a fanzine band. The first record was out on Slapped, Newcastle local, very DIY. Then they signed to EMI or something, and then
he says something, we'll get her picture.
But I like the fact that this fanzine had her on the cover, and probably most people wouldn't even recognise her now, but that was her in about 95, I'd say probably.
So,
they were a great band actually. Kaneki were a great band, yeah.
So great band.
Colt, why did you go for paper, not internet?
Oh well, I think it's like Ari said, it's just there's something really important about having and holding physical items. There's an intimate reaction to having something, to objectiveness.
It becomes a collector's item then. Oh, I've got a limited edition of this, and it becomes almost like a piece of artwork then, and it's the physical thing that. But during lockdown, you did start making digital ones so people could get hold of a library that we did.
We were making digital zines for helping people do artistic projects while in lockdown and things.
Yeah, so you still had that DIY quality to it, but just because people didn't get it out, because it was when we were properly locked down, you couldn't leave your house.
We used uni a lot to print ours, so then we sort of
Well done, Sussex College, whatever it's called.
But ultimately I would prefer to get back to doing the physical stuff, because like Ali said as well, that there is some amount of sort of intellectual gatekeeping when it comes to digital design and things like that. It takes so much longer to lay stuff out digitally and things, and have that come together in a cohesive way that people can enjoy online, rather than just doing it.
I've had to do like loads of stuff on the internet because Mum thought it was really cool to put like stuff like these thingies around the edges.
Oh, yeah.
And adding like little elements, and to get pictures, and you have to go on like a site called Canva and like process it all from Word into that. So it is a bit more work, but it does look better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and when you're not setting things up to look like on a web page, it's so much easier to do design choices, because you can
just cut them up and stick them and like collage, and it looks.
You can understand
Anyone
how it's
can
going
do
to
it.
look, because you know how it's going to look, 'cause you're going to print it out. You're not seeing it on a phone or a laptop or a larger screen, where you're not going to understand how the layout's going to work.
So Arlo, how do people react when you offer them a fanzine at a gig, if you ever get to go to gigs these days? Are they surprised that fanzines still exist?
Yeah. So basically, I've got like a few friends, and they like kind of just stare at me and just like then try to chat about the zine, and I try to chat about something else, because like I have, no offense, but I've said it like all these sentences like 100 times. It's get a bit boring. But I've got like other friends and people like that who just don't care, and if I go to their house, they'll just like go, "Oh, do you want to play Roblox?" or something like that. But yeah, at gigs, because I went to a gig last night, I gave the zine to the band who were playing, called Brasher, and they really liked it. And there was this guy sitting with them, and I heard him say, "Oh, what's that?" And then Mel, the guitarist, had to like say, "Oh, he makes a zine."
Excellent. So, Kulk, do people who are at your gigs, are they surprised about a fanzine existing still on paper, or do they take it?
Although you find it more from older people who are more or less like, "Oh, a fanzine, I haven't seen one of those in years." Yeah, you find, but with like younger people, they're like, "Cool, a fanzine," because I think it's still very prominent in sort of art scenes and things like that.
Yeah, like the more like people that we know, like arty people, like if you go to Norwich, for instance, people know what a zine are, but they're still like, "Oh, wow, that's cool."
Yeah.
But yeah, you still get people that have no idea what they are, and that's really interesting.
In Norwich, zines are quite a big thing. Site Collective, an artist collective in Norwich, have a zine for zine like drop-off box, like put in a zine, take out a zine thing. So there's a community there. We've got there's No Glum Zine that that's sort of documenting sort of the Norwich music scene,
which is out this year. So
and he does lovely work. That's really nice. Got the Site Collective stuff. I don't know how much of it we have. It's all in a massive pile around the desk. And then
you got like Cambridge.
Yeah, Cambridge. You have Generation. So there's definitely loads of people making.
Yeah, these are more like nice publications.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have an artistic way, you tend to either go really DIY or like really nice.
Yeah, you either go like
which I think we've done.
How we used to, because we do sort of two types, where we'll do like the like really photocopy, like
spray painted fronts,
brutal ones, and then we'll do like nice layouts and stuff like that for like and get them printed nice and things.
Yeah.
And so
you've got that contrast that people like. I think.
Interesting. Two more questions for this lot, then we'll have a little quiz and then we'll finish. So let's start with Kulk, as they're on the screen at the moment. What do you think the worst and best bits are about doing a zine, as far as you see it?
Best is, can I do the best?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Go for that.
I'd say it's like just meeting other artists and bands that also do it, and people that enjoy them, like creating a community, like just meeting everyone today, like it makes you really inspired to like carry on.
Yeah.
And just promote other artists as well. Like if you like the No Glam Zine, they promote loads of different artists, so it's really nice community. That's my best.
Well, worst has to be when you when you print a bunch of them and something's spelt wrong. That's okay.
Get that look.
Yeah. Arlo, have you got a worst bit or a best bit or both, hopefully?
I think one of the worst bits is because I'm a kid and I have like school, I don't get that much free time since I've started the zine. And like, sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Best bit.
Yeah.
Is there
Wait. Best bit probably like it gives me a bit of pocket money, and I've been able to buy some really cool stuff like video games and books, and the Lego Millennium Falcon.
I've seen you doing that, yeah. You've also met some quite interesting people, I do believe. Yeah.
I've met like super furry animals and people like that. Like some of my favourite bands, and they're all really lovely people.
And you've talked to idols, I believe.
Yeah, I've talked to idols a couple of times. Not the whole band, but yeah.
Yeah, you've met loads of great people. Last question in this little bit then. So Arlo, I'll start with you because you talked about your friends already. Would you advise your friends to set up a zine, and if so, why or why not?
I would advise people to like set up zines.
Yeah.
Knowing like all my best friends, sometimes they can be quite lazy and they probably like lose interest.
Yeah. Kulk, what about the same question? Would you advise friends to set up a fanzine? Why not?
Well, I guess most of them already do, really.
Yes.
Because we just surround ourselves with people.
Yeah, well, I think we sort out friends who really do. I think. Yeah, I would advise people do.
Yeah,
I think
even if it's just something you make for yourself and you don't want to share with anyone else.
If you're already making creative works, just slap them on an A4 sheet and photocopy it, and then you've made a zine. Yeah, I think that.
I think it's because it's so easy that you don't realise that you can make it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that it's to show their work they have to get it in galleries and things like that in terms of an art standpoint. Yeah,
that's a pretty good point to almost finish on, because that takes us right back to the 70s when it's a political thing in itself, saying that art doesn't exist in galleries, it exists all around, and we can all be.
I think being a zine is it's protesting against the culture we have of
top down.
Yeah, exactly. It's
yes,
it's taking that for yourself and producing it.
Indeed. That's what good education is all about. That's why I'm so impressed with Arlo for doing it, as his lockdown project was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I wish I was that cool when I was 10.
It's so cool.
I wouldn't have done that, and because I would have been too lazy. I would have. I don't think I did anything when I was 10.
So thanks everyone for hanging around. We've got almost time to finish. I'm sorry it didn't work live on Facebook, because then we'd have had comments to deal with as well. But I had a little quiz at the end, so can everybody unmute themselves if they want to play the quiz? I'm going to show some pictures, fingers crossed, and if you identify what it is, or particularly if it's yourself, can you shout? But don't shout your name, shout the name of your fanzine, okay? To make it hard, and then you'll be able to explain what it is. So, is everybody unmuted? Yeah, so now I have to find the pictures. No, I didn't mean to do that. Any second now. Share screen. I bet, sorry, any second now. When I said any second now, I meant any minute now. There's lots of little things to click.
Any hour.
Any minute. Some of them came out big and easy to see. Some of them did not come out big and easy to see, like the first one. Here's the first one. Shout the name of your fanzine.
Abuse.
Yes.
Sid.
You want to tell us something about that, Sid?
That's the first compilation CD I put out on the wonderfully named Abuse Records.
Abuse your friends, and it's got.
It was basically it was like an oral fanzine. Oral fanzine, is that word? A musical fanzine. So the bands that we were raving about, we decided to put on a CD, and they sold all right. Actually, they sold pretty well, weirdly. So there you go. I don't know why we called it Abuse Your Friend.
It was because of me, because mine was all about D and friends, so we just put the two together.
You've got so much better memory than me do.
Keep talking.
Abuse Your Friends. Okay.
That goes for about £1.29 on eBay.
That's the one I showed you.
Oh, Richard, I can't really talk about this issue because I'll get into trouble. So let's just move on. Let's just say a quite famous author now is multi-millionaire, and I'm not. So there you go.
Really? Oh, there we go. Let's see if I can go to the next.
Well, a husband anyway.
Right, ready to share. Fingers on buzzers, everybody. Oh, it's me. Sorry, repeat.
Oh God, I remember that night. I remember that night.
This is Dream.
Bay City Rollers.
So that's Dream
Smash.
and Thomas meeting Smash, who were a band that should have been more famous than they were.
They should have been.
And this was when Dweeb was 9. He just beats Arlo by a year, and then here they are 20 something years later. That's Ed and Dweeb again, and he's grown up. So that was me. That was my indulgence then. Right, you ready to shout? There's no more of me, I don't think.
Back in a minute.
Oh, that's me. All about D and friends. That's and the best wee fanzine in the world ever. That's my output.
Oh,
The llama farmers, blimey.
They were great.
Does anybody know anything about this? Because somebody.
That's the
The Nazis.
the school kids against the Nazis.
Yeah, school kids against the Nazis.
And that's a
But I've never seen it before though.
I just think it's a really cool front cover of that kid skateboarding.
Good.
Oh, skateboarders. Yeah.
So that is school kids against the Nazis. You're right.
Yeah.
Outside schools.
They did a really famous badge as well with skateboarders against the Nazis.
It was a sticker.
And, fireworks against the Nazis was my favourite.
It's a bit ironic that poor bloke with his skateboard was shot in that far right rally in America. Anyway, we won't talk about that now. Maybe another one. Oh, I'm sorry, it's me again. Look at that. Talk about
no, to smash.
Talk about glue sticks, cutting everything and pasting it on. Issue 2, June 95.
Khalif, they were an amazing Asian hip hop band. They were great.
Yeah, Kulk.
Yeah,
Hooray, Kulk.
That's gorgeous.
that was our first first batch of singles that we
Actually, it's issue 3 though.
yeah we did those singles after we did the blue plaque unveiling for John Peel in his home.
Oh, in Stowmarket.
Yeah, because we live round there. We Sheila asked us to play for his opening of the grand unveiling of the plaque. And we couldn't afford to record anywhere, so we bootlegged it off the BBC and then released it as a single.
That's a great story. Sid.
Oh, the
Period
greatest band ever
Pains.
to come out of Reading. The Period Pains were 4 13-year-old girls, as you can see. They did 1 7-inch on Damaged Goods that cracked into the top 75. 1 Peel session, which is probably the fastest Peel session of all time. It's 8 minutes, and they played like 1,000 miles an hour. They played Reading Festival, 97, 96. I think they did about 12 shows, and they were phenomenal. If anyone wants to listen to some great teenage punk rock, I would recommend Period Pains. And also, something came up on Twitter the other day. I think it was 97, John Peel's Festive 50, though this record was actually 5th. Really? The Festive 50, sandwiched between Mogwai and Belly Sebastian. So
Mogwai.
This girl here, Chloe, she still makes music. She was in Charlie XCX's live band for a bit.
Wow.
And she tours with James, another 90s sort of Brit poppy bands. And she's also in a band called Pure Reason Revolution, or sort of proggy band, but they've been around for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, Period Pains, I would...
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Period Pains is one of my favourite bands in a weird sort of way. I don't know
That
why.
looks like Arlo.
Arlo shouted. Tell us about this picture, please. Are you going to tell us about this, Arlo? Who are you there with? Well, I know the answer, obviously.
So basically, as you may know, I work at Longwell Records on a Sunday. And one day after school, I was meant to be going to an after-school club, and I saw my mum, waving her arms and shouting my name outside the gate, which was pretty embarrassing. Get up, Mum! Embarrassing! Basically, she was like, John and Dev from Idols, your favourite band! I'll come into Longwell Records! Yeah! So we drove to Keynsham, where Longwell Records is, and just spent a couple of hours chatting with them and talking about their new record, which had come out yesterday.
Excellent. Good. What's next? Stay awake. Oh, this was something that somebody sent in. I thought I should put it on. This is from Rahul. I don't really know anything about it. I was hoping if we were live, he would have sent in information about it. Decolonising the arts curriculum. Apparently, it is a fanzine, and that's issue 2.
Gosh.
Issue 2. So I'll talk to Rahul more about that later and see if we can do something about it. Oh, this is tiny.
Hey.
I'm going to put the bigger one on. This is a tiny version. Tell us a bit about it, Tony.
This is the one, the Ripped and Torn, when I wrote it in Glasgow, but by the time it came out, I was living in London. So it's a real crossover. And Glasgow's only fanzine on down the side. I've done. I think I travelled to see Iggy Pop play in Newcastle, which is the sort of things you used to do in those days. But David Bowie was playing keyboards for him.
Wow.
And there's another one. That's the first time we put colour on the cover. I think that one. So experimenting. If the printer, this point had a printer, you might say, "I've got something. Do you want to try it out?" So okay, tell me how to do it. So things like that, where you're doing 2 sheets, very technical. You do the black stuff, and you do another sheet for all the red stuff. Send them to them, and hopefully it works. Because being a fanzine, if it didn't work, it's art. You know, whenever it comes out, it's meant to be like that.
Yep, definitely.
Tony, did you ever see the adverts live?
Yeah,
The adverts, yeah, many times, yeah, mate.
God, we should go out for a beer sometime. Eh?
That's
Definitely.
from Temporary Hoardings issue 3. I think this was all the bands that played in the previous year. Thanks to all the bands that played in that.
Oh, I didn't realise that. That's interesting.
First year of Ra, and it was a design that was done by Lucy Toothpaste. Actually, she was a writer normally, but everybody just did things, you know, and that's a good example of it, because I think it's brilliant the way she's got the Cimarron's band, like he looks like he's Batman because the way she's cut it out.
And here's another one you might want to talk about.
Yeah, that's Roger. You say something about that, because I wasn't involved at that time.
Is that issue 1?
That's issue 1, yeah, and that's got our slogan on the front: "Love music, hate racism." And it also starts off with this T-shirt: "We want rebel music." And
rebel music that breaks down people's fear of one another. Cry music, now music that knows who the real enemy is. I used to think that was brilliant. That was
Still is.
That was our, you know, in a way, that was our manifesto. We yeah.
It's still so relevant today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is that inside was we did our blow-ups.
Yeah.
And then in the centre, that's when we started doing...
I'll turn this off. Yeah, you show us. Oh, right, it's poster, yeah.
Yeah, that's a montage by...
That was a Temporary Hoarding.
Yeah, that was a montage by Andy Dark. And because Eric Clapton came out with all this saying Enoch Powell was, you know, a real hero, and he'd been doing Nazi salutes and stuff like this. So, you know, he later apologised, actually.
Gave Neil £1,000 quid.
Kind of dalliance with, you know, that sort of dressing up in Nazi uniforms was a kind of hip thing to do, or you know, and he really apologised later, unlike Eric Clapton.
Like Eric Clapton.
Who never apologised.
2 more pictures to go.
Yeah. Oh God. That's me with the sunglasses on at the front. I don't know what am I holding?
That's great. That's Greg from Create. That's
It is Greg from Create. Yeah, we're on a boat. You told me, Richard, but I don't.
The boat, the garbage the band put on to try and get us to like their single. Yeah.
That's really bizarre.
I was far too cool. So.
Yes.
There's the X-Ray single. That's
the X-Rays. I can't. Is yours? Is that a repeat single?
No,
that's a Create single.
No. Oh, that one. The white one that I'm holding, I don't even know what it is.
That's a Create single. Yeah.
Is it? I can't remember. I think this is the last picture. Oh.
Oh my God, you've done loads.
That's the same issue, though, doing it.
How many issues have you done, Arlo?
Was it different colours?
What? Yeah, different colours.
Okay.
You've done at least 3 issues. Is it more? I think I've got 4 of them.
Yeah, I've done 4, and I'm just like trying to send out 5 because I'm interviewing Simon from Biffy Clyro on Tuesday, but he keeps rescheduling because he's in the studio.
Okay.
Very cool.
Blimey. I saw Biffy Clyro in the back of a truck in front of 200 people about 10 years ago in Reading.
They used to be. They used to support everyone, didn't they? They were around. They were around for
20 plus
years. Yeah.
No one gave us stuff for the first 5 years. Like they were on Beggars. The first 2 albums on Beggars Banquet.
Probably more like I don't know how many years. But I remember seeing them in the 90s.
They were, yeah, they were. Didn't they have to go get jobs and start digging holes or something they had to go dig holes in motorways or something, didn't they?
Right, I'm going to sort of bring this to an end. It's going to be a massively long video.
I can waffle on forever, Rich.
We'll do it. I know that Arlo already said he might do an individual show at some point, so we'll maybe think about that with other people as well who want to. There is a final question that is the most important and the most difficult question. Dean knows what's coming up now. Some people ask about Marmite and so on. I don't ask things like that. The most important question, I'm going to ask Ruth for. Ruth, what's best, chips or cream buns? Chips. Okay. D, what's best, chips or cream buns?
Chips.
Arlo?
Chips.
Jade and Tom?
Chips.
Tony?
Chips.
Sid?
Cream bun.
Richard, you must answer it now.
I'm not allowed to answer. I have to keep I've got to keep answering this.
Cream buns is far more punk rock.
You think so? I'm very as impressed in Arlo's fanzine. There's a little bar chart about his.
Yeah, totally. I honestly didn't know that kids were making fanzines anymore. So for an old man, it makes my little heart warm or something. I really have got to go to the pub, Richard.
Right, I'm going to thank you, everybody. Thanks, people who've watched. Don't forget, you can
brilliant.
The links below.
Yeah, brilliant. More thanks. Good to meet everyone.
Thank you, everybody. It's lovely to meet you all.
Yes,
Yeah. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Bye.